guys, it's Lee and a fishbowl. I've been putting this off for a long time. I don't really know why, but anyway, I wanted to give you the rest of the story. I posted, I guess, right after I started doing vlogs on YouTube. I did the first in a series of vlogs about my pregnancies. And I'm pulling it up right now. I should have been more prepared. It was called, sorry, I tried to plan this and I thought, I can't plan it. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to handle that. So I'm just kind of wing it. And anyway, the vlog that you'll want to go to, and I'll put a link somewhere, is TTC number 2, part 1, where it all began. Now, most of you know, because you followed me, that I have a son. He's 8. And we waited about, I guess, when he turned 5. You can go back and watch that that vlog, that TTC number 2, part 1. Kind of gives a recap of that. But in short, we got pregnant on our first month of Clomid when we started trying for number 2, when we were ready. So that vlog will tell you how we found out we were pregnant, what I did to get pregnant, and all of that. So go back and watch that one. So I'm going to pick up where we left off. The last thing I did was show you a photo slideshow of us when we had gotten our BFP, our big fat positive, and we were at Disney World, and it was an amazing, amazing moment. That was in September. I came home from Disney World and I took a couple of more tests, and they were very, very dark. I really, at that point, wasn't really, like, I was a pea on a stickaholic when it came to finding out if I was pregnant, but I was very naive, and like, once it was positive, I really didn't focus on if it got any darker or anything like that. I didn't know about that. I really didn't. I mean, I knew if it was darker, that was great, but I didn't know that you could sort of follow a progression and see what was happening in your pregnancy early on, to some extent, not always. So I really didn't care, and we were at Disney World anyway, and I was very precautious when we were at Disney World. I tried to be very careful in what I rode and that kind of thing. I did ride a few roller coasters right before I found out. But anyway, so we came home. I tested when we got home that day. Sorry, my foot's stuck. And I had nice dark lines that day when we got home, and I really just didn't think anything else about it. I called the doctor, and she scheduled me for an appointment to come in. They didn't do blood work, did a urine test on me, weighed me, did all the normal stuff, and I talked to the doctor, and she examined me, and everything was normal. So they scheduled me for an ultrasound. And so my husband and I came back for the ultrasound, and we had, I think we had our son with us. And I have the pictures of those, and I'll put them on here too. But we went for the ultrasound, and of course it was not an abdominal ultrasound, it was the other. And so I remember getting there, and I was holding my water because they wanted a full bladder. And we got there, and she did the ultrasound, and she kept having like trouble finding it. And I, again, naive, had no idea what was going on. So she had trouble. She made me go to the bathroom, empty my bladder, came back in, and lo and behold, she found it. And for her, she said, and the doctor said everything looked great. They even found a little heartbeat on the screen. We didn't hear the heartbeat, I don't think. It's been 4 years ago. This was in 2009. But we definitely have pictures of it on the ultrasound where it shows the heartbeat. So, and it was kind of hard to see. It's so small. I was probably 7 or 8 weeks. I'll have to, the ultrasound picture will show. I should have been more prepared, but I don't want to be prepared. But anyway, so that was that. and I have to tell you, it made my husband very nervous. I remember him saying this was the weirdest ultrasound, and it was a very unsettling feeling for him. It was like, I don't know, maybe God was preparing us in some kind of subconscious way, because we really didn't get worried, but my husband did make notice that he said, and even after, that that was the weirdest ultrasound. It just didn't seem to go right. I mean, we found it, but it just seemed very nerve-wracking. So anyway, morning sickness came. I never threw up. I never threw up with K2 though, but I was extremely nauseated. I had terrible gagging. I couldn't stand the smell of jewelry on me, which was all very normal for me with K2. So I felt like I was pretty much right on target with my pregnancy. I never had any spotting, never had any cramps. Things were progressing like they should be. And so we were in the process. Let me back up a little. I had started my graduate work for my master's in the spring. And of course, this was September. I was working on my master's full time. My husband had just changed to a new church about 30 miles away. We had broke ground on a new home, and we're in the process of building a home from the bottom up. And so there was a lot of crazy transitional stuff going on in our life too. But the pregnancy seemed to be going great. We were picking out colors for our rooms. We had a dedicated room for a baby nursery. Everything was like perfectly lining up. I was going to be finished with my master's in April or March, whatever first quarter of that second semester is. So mid-spring, and I was due in May. I'm a teacher, and May could not have been a more perfect timing as far as having a baby. I had disability funding that was going to pay me, even though it was summer, pretty much. So I was actually, in some weird kind of way, making money being pregnant and having this baby at the right time. Everything was perfect about this pregnancy. As Thanksgiving arrived, I finally ordered my first maternity clothes. I remember getting a big box of clothes from Old Navy. And I finally decided to go get my hair cut, and I was feeling better. And I was right around 14 weeks. I think I turned over my weeks on Sundays, if I remember right, or Mondays. And I was like 14 weeks the week coming into Thanksgiving. We had a fabulous Thanksgiving. I ate what I wanted. I was loving every minute of it. Feeling better. I had not really gained but maybe 2 or 3 pounds because I had been kind of gaggy and feeling. And I should mention, let me go back. At 12 weeks, I did have an appointment with my OBGYN, and we heard the heartbeat on the Doppler. She examined me, and I was growing normally. Everything looked great. I was maybe a little anemic, if I remember right. And I always have been anemic anyway. So that was all, everything was going fine. I was starting to actually look at nursery stuff and think about, I'd already picked out the color for the room. We'd already picked out a little chandelier for the room because we had to do lighting and all for the house. And Thanksgiving came, and we went to eat at my parents', and we went to eat at my husband's parents', and we came home. And then Friday we got up, and we were going to Auburn, Alabama for the Iron Bowl. And I don't know if you know anything about Alabama football. We're huge Alabama fans. We're not Auburn fans. We're Alabama fans. Roll Tide. But we had gotten 2 tickets to go to the Iron Bowl, which is when Alabama and Auburn play each other. And I'm sure if you live in this country, you've heard about that rivalry at some point. And if you haven't, look it up on the internet. It's pretty intense, really intense at times. I'm not like one of those intense people. Like I get into the game, but I'm not going to do something nuts. A lot of crazy people out there, but long story short, we got 2 tickets. So we got up at the butt crack of dawn to drive 4.5 hours away to Auburn to go to the Iron Bowl. We got up real early on Friday morning. The game was Friday afternoon, and we drove all the way up there. Stopped at Walmart to get some Black Friday stuff because it was Black Friday for K2. Went on to Auburn, had the most amazing game. It was one of those very nail-biting games. And we pulled it out and won that game by the skin of our teeth, and went on to win the national championship game. So it was an amazing season, but Then that night we drove back home. K2 spent the night with my mother. My dad was, I think my dad was in Nebraska. He was duck hunting. We picked up K2 Saturday morning, came home, kind of just did our own thing. And then it was Sunday morning. Of course, it's a big day for us because we're a ministry family and we had church. So Sunday morning, my husband always left early and went on because he had to be there. There were 2 services at our church. He had to be at the early one, and we always went to the middle school, the Sunday school in the middle, and the second service because I had to get K2 ready as well as myself. So my husband was already in at our church, and I was getting ready that morning and getting K2 ready, and I noticed that I was starting to cramp some. Totally out of the blue, nothing I'd ever had happen before during the pregnancy or any pregnancy. And I kind of just dismissed it. I did notice it a little more on the drive over to church. Then as the morning went on, kind of here and there, I was tired. And I remember we went to my parents after church. We stayed there on Sundays at that point because our house here had not been built. We were still 30 minutes away. And we didn't want to drive back to our house and then come back to church that night. So we always stayed at my parents'. And I laid on the couch there for a while after lunch, and I was just really tired. And the cramping was picking up a little. But still, nothing in here really dawned on me. So I told Kevin, I said, you know, K2 and I just going to go home and relax. And he said, you do that, and I'll go on and do the church thing, and then I'll meet you at home. So we went home, and went to McDonald's that evening. I remember going to the drive-thru and getting K2 a Happy Meal with chicken nuggets, and I had chicken nuggets too. And I remember coming home and I was cleaning the dishes up in the sink, and I felt like a little something down there, and it felt like when your period starts. So I immediately went to the bathroom, and sure enough, there was red, and even then, it really. Like, it concerned me, but my mind never, ever went to that place of losing a baby. I just had never known anybody, never dealt with that, and so never even thought about it. I mean, it was concerning enough that I called my mom, I called Kevin, and I called the doctor, and the doctor basically, she's like, I think she said just, you know, if the bleeding gets really bad, or if you begin to have a lot of pain, then come to the emergency room. But at that point I wasn't having either. And she said, otherwise, then as soon as Monday comes, the next morning comes, call us and let's get you in and check you out. But she never once mentioned anything either. So about the time K2 went to bed and Kevin got home from church around 8:30, and the cramping was picking up, the bleeding was continuing, and K2 fell asleep in bed with me that night. And I remember Kevin saying, well, I'll just lay in my chair in the den. He was just going to lay on his chair, and he fell asleep in there. And I remember as the night went on, it was getting more and more intense. Now, remember, I, in my life, have never had contractions. With K2, if you go back and watch my video on him, never dilated, no progression, overdue by a week, fluid was low, he was taken by C-section. I never had contractions with him. So I did not realize that's what was occurring. But they were becoming more frequent and more intense, just like contractions. And by about 1 or 2 in the morning, there was so much pain that I woke Kevin up and I said, I can't take this. Something's wrong. We've got to go. And at that point, I began to get panicked. I remember waking K2 up and saying, come on, guy, we got to go. Mommy's not feeling well. Something may be wrong. We need to go to the doctor, the hospital. And so we took him. No one was near enough to get him. And we really, at that point, we still didn't realize the seriousness of the situation. So it was me and Kevin and K2, and I remember walking into the ER, and as soon as I sat down to fill out paperwork, this huge gush just came out. And it was like, I knew something was bad was about to happen. So yeah, then they rushed me right on back, and they were like, I'm thinking this through. I mean, it's almost like I can just play this over in my head. And then they were like, okay, we need to take you straight back. Forget the paperwork. They can do that in a minute. So they immediately took me back. They said, forget the paperwork. We'll get it later. And they took me back to the ER in a wheelchair and put me in a room. And the doctor came in, and I was hysterical at that point, saying, I don't know what's going on. Please tell me this isn't a miscarriage. Please tell me it's not a miscarriage. And my husband was there, and my son was there, because there was no one there for him at that point. I think he had called my mom and said, please come and meet me, but she was 30 minutes away. And I don't really remember whether K2 was in the room. I know my husband was. And then I know he walked out and he came back in. And I remember the doctor saying, let's just take a look and see what's going on. And he got me up in the stirrups, and they started to examine me. And he said, I just want to tell you that you are losing this baby. This is a miscarriage. And I remember laying on that table and just screaming at the top of my lungs. And saying no over again. And I had never in my lifetime thought about losing a baby. I had never even known anybody really that had been through a miscarriage, so I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing about what to expect. And I remember screaming, and them coming over and I think putting something in my IV to calm me down. And I really don't remember much else. I remember a lot of suctioning down there and a lot of stuff going on, and the nurse standing by my arm and saying, it's going to be okay, honey. We're going to take care of you. And I remember, like within minutes, it was over. And I remember my husband walking. So he was in the room, and then he would come and stand by me, and then he walked out. And I think he was trying to shift between taking care of me and taking care of our son at the same time. I think someone was sitting out, maybe a nurse was sitting outside with K2. I don't remember, and K2 doesn't really remember it either. So, but I remember my husband coming back in and just squalling. Him bawling his eyes out, and I've never seen my husband cry before. And he wasn't just crying, he was bawling. And thinking, oh my gosh, this is really happening. And then it was kind of like all over, and they had me sit up. And by that time, my medicine had kicked in, and they had kind of given me something to take the edge off. And I was kind of coming out of the hysterics. And I was kind of like going into this, don't worry, and it's okay. And I was kicking into the whole gear of trying to console my husband, because I had the medicine in me, I guess. And then I got really nauseated. They gave me Dilaudid, I can't remember the name of it, for pain. Worst stuff ever. Made me so sick. So then they put me full of Zofran. I threw up once, and then they put me full of Zofran, and that kind of took the edge off. And next thing I know, my mom's there, and she's taking K2. And then a few hours later, we're still sitting in the ER, and we're trying to decide whether they want to transfer me to the hospital where my OBGYN is, or keep me here. They were going to keep me and watch me for a while. And I remember getting up and saying I needed to go to the bathroom. And when I stood up, the nurse was in there with me, and the door was closed. And she's like, you still haven't passed your placenta, so we're going to have to either watch you till you pass it, or have it removed. And I stood up right after that to go to the bathroom, and my placenta literally fell out of me, like just a gush. And my placenta, and it was probably like that big. And I remember seeing that cord coming out of it and everything. It was like one of those moments where I was like grossed out but amazed at the same time, because I'd never seen that. But anyway, that was the placenta. They took it and put it in something and sent it off for testing. They gave my husband the option of what to do with our child. We wanted testing done on it. to see. They said they did think it was a boy, that obviously it had passed away around the 12-week mark. Well, we know we heard the heartbeat at 12 weeks, so it had to be sometime after that. Between 12 and I was turning 15 weeks the day I lost it. So we don't know exactly what happened or when. Anyway, they wheeled me up later to a holding room on the OBGYN floor, the birth rooms, and I had some very sweet nurses come in, and I just remember sitting there and crying for hours, and family would come in, and God loved my dad. He was all the way in Nebraska, and he got in the car and packed up his stuff and left and drove home just to see me the next day. And I just remember, it's just like a big blur, and I just sat there and I was like, I don't understand. And when they wheeled me out of the hospital, still looking pregnant, but knowing I wasn't, and then I was leaving that child there, I think it was like a part of me died. So they came home and we just took it easy for a few days, and I had a piece of placenta that was evidently stayed in me, and I had to pass it, and that gave me some terrible cramping for a while. Family came and saw me, and went over and stayed with my dad and mom for a little while, and saw my dad since he had not been there when it happened. It was one of those situations that I just never want to go through again, and I just I don't know. The autopsy took several weeks to come back, and it did show like webbing of the fingers and neck, which indicated that it could have been a chromosomal issue. The autopsy was not a very good autopsy, and I was really disappointed in the results. They did not test it for anything. They just observed it. You know, there were a lot of questions about whether we were going to have a funeral or not, and at that point, we were so innocent and had no idea what to do, and we did not do a funeral. I mean, it was the week, you know, we were going into the week of December, the first week of December, and Christmas, and things coming up, and I had to kind of get back into survival mode because I had a son who needed to have Christmas, and normalcy in his life, and he was devastated, and he cried, and he would get in bed with me and say, "Mommy, it's going to be okay. Peanut's in heaven." And he would just say things to me and try to comfort me. He was the sweetest thing. And we went out to eat not long afterwards, and he got a balloon at dinner. And I'll never forget him taking that balloon when we got out of the restaurant. And it was like a week after it happened, and we were trying to get back to normal. And he took the balloon, and he said, "Mommy, I'm going to let this balloon go, and it's going to go up there in heaven, and Peanut can play with it." And so he let go of the balloon. And, yeah, so, you know, we got a Christmas ornament that we put on the tree in memory of him. I do remember that Christmas just being a total mess, a total blur. I don't know. I think my body went into autopilot. I don't know how. I got all the Christmas presents and managed to do all the church activities. My husband had a Christmas float that he built for our local Christmas parade for our ministry. And you got to remember, this was his first Christmas at his new church. So there was no backing out of things, and people were very understandable. But, 4 or 5 days after the miscarriage, I was walking through the city on a Christmas float, by a Christmas float, trying to pick up the pieces and just do what I could. Tried to go back to work. I did do that, and I think I left one day early because I was hurting. I had not passed that piece of placenta, and I did finally pass it. It took several weeks for my numbers to drop to 0, and it's funny because at that point it was all, like I said, so new, such a blur to me, and I really just the experience happened before I realized I should have taken notes and written down things. I don't know the exact week that it got back down to 0, like how many weeks it took. And we took a few months off and really kind of had to think about things. There were days in the next few months that I cried and cried and cried, and there were days that I was fine. There were days, I can remember one day in particular, my husband calling. It was a Sunday, and I just was not up to church. And I stayed home, and I remember my husband calling me during Sunday school when he had a break from his office, and he was just crying. And I had somehow missed the phone call. I don't know if I was in the shower or I was still sleeping or what. But he left me the longest, sweetest message about how much he loved me and how much he missed the baby, and how it just, you know, you go through those feelings of anger and questioning why. And he was going through that just as well as me. You know, he questioned if it was something he wasn't, you know, doing right, or if it was a punishment from the Lord. And we all know that that's not what it is. But you go through those things, and it's perfectly normal to go through that. I questioned everything I ate. I questioned the fact that I had my hair colored the week it happened, which obviously is not the reason, because he had already passed away. I questioned, I mean, it was like, there was so many things that go through your head, and you think, oh, well, maybe that's why it happened, or maybe that's why it happened. And you're really left with no real reason, no real explanation. I mean, you know, they could say it might have been a chromosomal issue, but you just never will know. So you go through those questioning times where you feel like, you know, could I have prevented this? What could I have done differently? But then finally that fog will lift, and you kind of come back around, and you feel like you can move on. I will say that I had times, even a year later, I had dark days. Not like days, but like I might have them. And usually it would occur when we would continue trying to get pregnant and not that month. And it was like all those feelings of my loss came back. And it was that feeling of hopelessness. And, you know, for me as a Christian, even in the most hopeless moments, I have Jesus. And, you know, I know not all of you out there may believe this, but it was like even in my worst moments, he was there, and I knew that things were going to be okay, and God was going to take care of us, and he's given us that promise. And so, you know, and of course there are people a whole lot worse off than me out there. So there was always someone that has a much worse story than me. But, so yeah, that's kind of what happened in our miscarriage, our first miscarriage. I'm going to continue vlogging in the next few days. My other losses, none of them were as traumatic as this one, as dramatic as this one either. I guess you're never the same once you have a loss. You never look at being pregnant like, oh, I'm pregnant, let's go to the store, let's buy everything, let's plan everything in your 5 weeks. You never look at that again. For me, if I ever do get pregnant again and sustain a good pregnancy, I don't know that I'll let my guard down. You know, I say I might let it down once I get to like 35 weeks, 36 weeks, 38 weeks. I don't know. It may be holding my baby in my arms, because I know things can happen even at 40 weeks. But you know, there's also a part of me that says I can't live that way. I have an 8-year-old son that I could worry, and I do worry every day about his safety and his well-being. I can't live that. I can't. There's going to be a point, if I am ever pregnant again, that I'm going to embrace it. And you just have to put your trust in the Lord and know that if it happens again, then it's his will, and that he will take care of us. And not that it was his will for me to hurt and have all that pain, but because we live in a world that's not perfect and it's sinful, that things happen, and it's just part of human nature, sadly. So I think, I don't know, it'll be weird to experience that. I pray I do get to experience it and have that take-home baby. But I'll never look at pregnancy the same. So, yeah, it's a crazy journey. I had no idea that 4 years ago, when I got that positive test at Disney World, that I'd still be sitting here today and not have a baby. But there's a lot of filler between this miscarriage and today that I also need to fill y'all in on, and I will do a vlog on that real soon. If you've stuck around this long, I know this is a long vlog, but I don't know any other way to do it, but just to kind of tell you piece by piece how it worked. So thanks for sticking around and listening, and I hope that you will share this with people who are going through loss, and maybe it can give them some encouragement and let them know they're not alone. And that's why I do this, is because I want to be able to encourage those who lose and let them know that there are other people that have been through it and can help them. So thanks for watching, and you'll have a great day. Bye.